Last week, we dug in deep. We talked about some of the emotions that we experience when we are divorcing or ending a long-term relationship. We dug deep, we talked about it, but today we're going to talk about what's most important, which is the recovery, how we move on with our lives. Right after this, we'll talk about it. What is mindset? Our mindset is based on what we believe, and anything we believe in, we put into motion. I have spent my life putting the mindset of perseverance into motion, and now I am here today to share my journey along with others whose mindsets have changed the course of their lives. Hi, I'm mindset coach Lorraine Lindsey, and I believe that if you can change your mind, you have the power to change your life. So are you ready? Welcome back to another episode of The Mindsetters, where we believe that if you can change your mind, we have the power to change your life. I am your host, Coach Lorraine Lindsey, a certified peak performance and life coach. I am going to zip through this really fast because we have a lot of content, and it's something that's important that I want to share about recovery and getting over heartbreak from divorces or long-term relationships. We have our reoccurring guest, Rodney, was on the show with us last week, and one of the lipstick ladies is here today to share her perspective because she's lived through it as well. Before we get into the show, do not forget to hit the subscription button. Give us a thumbs up. Send us your comments. I've been getting a lot of comments, good and bad, on this particular topic. And it's been a trigger for some people, and we're going to kind of talk about that because whenever something is triggering you or you're offending or you're feeling some kind of way, it's because it's some unhealed, especially when your triggers are with a person you don't even know. But I'll take it. This is what I put this platform here for. So I want to get right into this. Rodney, thank you for coming back. Love your words. You're really good at just really making things clear. And I know that people really value the things that you share and your insight. And of course, we've got Carmen Smith here. Again, one of the lipstick ladies who's coming to talk about her personal experience too and what she did for her own recovery. We're all people who have been divorced. I've even gone through long-term breakups and the emotional experiences, they're all pretty similar when you're going through a loss and things like that. So I do want, before we get started, is for me to say this and disclaim this. I am talking a lot about my old relationship, my ex-husband, but by no means do I have any ill will. Do I think this person is a bad person? And I also understand that he is not here to speak from his perspective of what happened in that relationship. I am just sharing my platform and what I went through emotionally during that time. We are adults. We've moved on. We're both in very happy spaces, and there's absolutely no hard feelings. So I do want to put that out there because a lot of people seem to think that I'm just constantly bashing the guy, and it may seem like that. And at that time, that's how I felt. I went through some things with him, and so and that's just life. You know, when you're being hurt and you feel hurt, you're going to share those things. So I do want to put that out there, though, because he's not a bad person at all. All right, so let's get into this. We recap really quick. You know, we talked about some pain points last week, the feelings of being replaced, which, oh my God, I had a lot of men get triggered by that when I said he got a knocked off version of me. I mean, that triggered some people. They were in their feelings about it. And understandably, it came across, when I watched back the little clip that I shared, I guess I sounded a little full of myself. But obviously, there's always texture and it's whatever. But we also talked about the empty house and what it feels like to feel alone in that house, or coping and learning how to co-parent with children and how hard that can be to be in one house together. One of the things that I would like to kind of touch on a little bit, because we are all people who are divorced with us wanting the divorce at some point. I do want to kind of give texture to people who on the other side of that, where the divorce was asked, but they didn't really want the divorce. So I think when you're not the one wanting out, that could be really, really hard for that person. So I want to make sure that I'm mindful of what that person might have experienced as well as we talk about recovery. All right, so it's very long-winded. Anything you want to add to what we talked about last week? Any touches on that? Carmen wasn't here, but just to kind of recap.
No, it was a good discussion. I think we're ready for the next step.
We're ready to move on, right?
Absolutely.
We talked about the heavy stuff, how we feel, but now everybody's ready to move on. That was the biggest thing for me going through the divorce, was like, how long am I going to be in this pain? How long am I going to be pondering? How long am I gonna go through this, and what do I need to do to just get over it as quickly as possible? And so let's talk about these. Sorry, I got to pull up my little PowerPoint here, so I can stay on track since we are limited on time. The steps of, what is it, Quantum? Sorry, can you put the steps to building a new life? Thank you. I mean, you would think it was that easy, but the steps to building a new life. And so the first one, and again, I'll reference, I have a lot of articles that I read on this. So there's references in the notes if you are subscribing on YouTube. Steps to building a new life. The first one is to let yourself feel free. So who wants to kind of chime in on that, since I've been long-winded here in this intro?
I think I fell into that so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the experience of being in this deep, dark, depressed place after my divorce. I think I went through most of my darkness in the marriage towards the end, that when I was done, I was done. So I felt so like, I always describe myself as feeling like this butterfly with my wings being pulled down and I couldn't fly. And after, it was like, I'm free, and not like my marriage was bad or anything. It was just being somewhere I didn't want to be anymore.
Right.
So I didn't have like a long period where I was like,
Needing to free yourself.
no.
I think the definition of free changes.
Mm-hmm. It's different now than it was. What I thought was free then is different what it is now.
That's a good point. Yeah.
The first thing I did is I went on a cruise. I was traveling. I was just doing stuff. I was just free to do whatever whim I was feeling.
Right. You didn't have to ask permissions or anything, right?
So I thought that was freedom, just doing what I want when I want. But really, what I found later, that I had the freedom to grow. I had the freedom to step into who I really was. And I think that's the true definition of freedom, is being free to be you, not just free to
mingle,
run amok.
mix and mingle.
Right. And I think for me, the whole thing of part of that recovery and that growth was, although I was the one who pulled the trigger on divorcing and getting the divorce finalized, it really wasn't the space that I wanted to be in. I was holding on for dear life, and I've said this many times, but the pain had become greater than the love. And I felt that the hand had to be forced because it got abusive and it was toxic. And I just was like, you got to get a grip on self and learn to love yourself, and you have to remove yourself from the situation. Everybody's telling you to get out, and finally I did. And so for me, I didn't know what that freedom was going to look like for me, because I wasn't emotionally and mentally ready. I was just doing what I thought was the right thing to do. So I think for me, the actual freedom for me initially was to finally just do it. And that was like the first step to freedom, to say, because I was pondering for so long. I was holding on for so long. So it felt like a ball and chain. The decision was a ball and chain. So for the freedom for me was to finally say, in this particular circumstances, I have to choose me, and I'm letting that go. And that was freedom for me initially. And I'll tell you, the day that I finally went down to the courthouse, and when I tell you, it took me a long time to get to that moment, but it was literally like I was on the edge. And I went down to that courthouse, and when I finally did the paperwork and I submitted it, I turned my phones off and everything, and I slept. I slept like I had never slept before, because it was just that weight, that weight from that decision was like, okay, it's done, and then the healing had to come after that. The next thing on the list is talking it out. What do you all feel like? And I want to again be mindful of people who have been divorced where they weren't asking for the divorce, and so they're still maybe in a stage of like, I didn't want this. And it's more for men than it is for women, right? Statistically speaking, we talked about this last week, more women file for divorce than men do. And with men, it's like, especially if there's family and kids and things like that, and especially if there wasn't anything they think they did wrong. Like, I was faithful, I didn't cheat, I went to work, I did these things. Why is she checking out? Why is she leaving me? Why is she breaking up our family? And it goes both ways. I'm just using this hypothetically, of course. So what do you all think the importance of, while you're pondering and going through all these things, of talking that out to get through your recovery?
Can you clarify Are you talking about talking with your former mate?
Or I'm saying maybe just that's a good question. Maybe all of the above, and maybe it's you talking to a counselor, maybe it's you trying to communicate with your
talking out
person
your
and
own
getting
feelings.
closure, or just being able to find a place to talk through the things that are going through that you're mulling through your mind.
I talk about everything, so.
Well, for example, let me kind of
Yeah.
make it easier. For example, and you had your ex-husband on the show, right? He actually has his own podcast here in the studio as well. But he came on the show and he was very open about his experience because he didn't want to be divorced. What do you think that if you two were to be able to talk it out and be able to talk, and I'm pretty certain that you guys have, because you guys actually are have a good relationship now. But at that time, what do you think he needed from you, or explanation from you, or to share from you to help him just say, okay, this is over and here is why?
I don't think at the time there would have been anything I could have said to make him understand why. I just don't, because that's not what he wanted. So he wasn't going to hear it. Later, he said one thing to me that he said, that made me feel like he actually got it. He said, I loved you the way I felt my mom needed to be loved. I didn't love you the way you needed to be loved.
Wow.
And I felt like, like that touched my heart, because that meant a lot, because it to me, it felt like he finally understood why. But that was years later.
Right.
So I don't know if there was anything we could have talked about at that time to change it. I think had we been talking more prior to, maybe we would have been able to fix it or tried counseling or something. But I don't think there's anything I could have said to make him understand and want to accept it.
Right.
I think it's important to have someone that you can talk to that's further ahead, that maybe have been to the process, or somebody that you validate as being a wise person. But at the time, I think it's very difficult to talk to the person you're divorcing, because normally communication is a big part of the problem.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? So as Carmen said, later on with growth, they could talk about it because perspectives change.
Right.
But a lot of times you're getting divorced because you both carry different perspectives of what you want, or what's satisfying, or
what's even happening within the relationship.
Right. So I think it's important to have someone to talk to that you can respect, but very rarely do I think you can talk to your mate when you're going through it.
I agree with that.
Understand.
It is, because there's too much tension, there's too much pain.
Yeah.
But for me, as we're talking about this and thinking about what does it mean to talk it out, from my perspective of my experience, at that time when things were going on, there was so much confusion in my mind. I didn't have a whole lot of clarity, but I was rationalizing and trying to create stories and narratives to suit and try to come up with reasons why things were happening the way they were happening. And I think for me, what I didn't do and what I wish I would have done sooner was find people, to your point, Rodney, that had some wisdom, some insight, that had been there, that had already gone through all the recovery stages, and really say to them, this is what I'm going through. This is what my mind is thinking. Because again, when you're going through long-term relationship that's like a marriage or an actual marriage, and it's ending, there was an idea in my mind that this was going to be a forever thing. And when it starts to fall apart, there's parts of you that you blame yourself for. And sometimes you don't understand why you're blaming yourself. And then you go into this sabotaging conversation. Why was I not enough for this person? Why didn't they want to work through things with me? Why did they go out and cheat? Or whatever the fill in the blank was for you in that dynamic. And so you start to create your own ideas, and it could be very damaging to your self-esteem and to who you think you are as a person, and it can make you feel incredibly unworthy. And so I think talking it out and finding someone to seek counsel with is truly imperative to you being able to move on and to not carry that into another relationship, because that's what I did. I didn't give myself enough time, and we'll get to that slide, where I carried all of those questions and all of those hardships and all that heartache into the next relationship, thinking that person was going to be my knight in shining armor, and it became a very sabotaging dynamic. So let's go on to the next one. The next one is embracing coping skills. So when your world is falling apart, sometimes you lose the sense or the stability to cope and get through. You almost start to feel hopeless and defeated and like, I don't know how I'm going to get through. And you start to chant that. That becomes your mantra. I don't know how I'm going to get through this. I don't know how to do it. And so you have to learn to embrace coping by changing the languaging, by telling yourself, I can get through this. It's going to take some time. What do I need to do? And again, reaching out to people. So what do you guys kind of want to say about the importance of embracing coping?
Um,
And I know it's hard. It's hard for you because you're not on the other end of the experience, right?
yeah, but I could speak from, so after my divorce, actually, we didn't get divorced till 5 years after we were separated because I carried so much guilt. And maybe that's the things I needed to cope with. Maybe not so much the pain and the grief, because I just felt like I'm just done. I still love this man. He's still in my life. I don't want to be married to him anymore. That was just my rational thinking. But the guilt that I carried behind, I probably just recently started to let that go. So I never coped with that.
That's actually pretty.
I never coped with
that's a really deep and profound point that you're making, because coping doesn't just apply to the person who is going through the pain or feeling like they've been left or abandoned by the relationship. There is a part of guilt that you may feel leaving, especially if there's kids involved.
Even to having conversations with him recently, like I put so much on it that he was like, "Why? I'm not even tripping off that." Like, but I felt like I left him at the lowest point of his life. I left him to struggle. I left him with nothing. I did all this. Like, I'm the big bad wolf. Even though I had my experience as to why, I just carried that guilt and I didn't want to hurt him anymore. So I felt like getting a divorce would hurt, like really filing for the divorce would just be another stab at him. And then it was like, well, I got to buy a house. So that was my excuse. It was kind of like all like
rationalization.
Like, okay, I got to buy a house. So now I have to do it. And I remember and we divorced in 2019 officially. And I mean, I bawled like a baby. Like I didn't even know where that emotion came from because I didn't even cry like that when he left the house. But it just like.
Well, because then it became real.
Yeah.
It was final.
So the coping skills, I guess, that I've come up with for myself was just really praying and forgiving myself and saying, I cannot carry this burden anymore. I can't, because I made a decision for me that was best for me at the time, and I have to just let it go.
Yeah.
But I never got therapy or anything for it. Maybe I should still. But yeah, that was something I realized that I didn't cope with.
But that's a good point. It's like learning to embrace coping is like learning to trust yourself in the decision that you felt you needed to make for yourself. And that could be hard because sometimes guilt, it'll riddle you, like it'll just weigh you down. And there is a lot of guilt with that. Did you experience that? Because I know you ended your marriage. Did you feel any guilt?
Not
or were
really.
you too free at the time?
No. I had checked out
checked out, yeah.
many years before I actually got divorced. I was just kind of there out of obligation. I think I told you last week. Did I tell you where I asked for a separation on Tuesday? And
Yes.
She told me she was pregnant on Friday.
Yes.
So I stayed 5 more years. And mentally, I was just
gone.
checked out for 5 years. The bigger thing for me was my life went so upside down after divorce. I had 2 businesses that one I sold for not much of a profit. Another, my ex-general manager became my competitor. And I was just not in the right headspace to fight that off. And next thing you know, I'm a couple $100,000 in debt, and bill collectors are calling every day. And it's like everything went bad. I felt like I was cursed. And the problem was I became my story. I kept telling this story of my divorce and the people from the religion I was in that was shunning me, and my best friend screwing me over. And I just told this story over and over and over again instead of coping with it. Now, the problem is I was married for 18 years. The person that always helped me get through things was my wife, right? The different challenges we had in life, we got through together. We were great business partners, but now it's all on me. And I had to learn to change that story because I really believe in the law of attraction. And I was attracting everything I did not want because my story was validating that.
Correct.
So I had to learn to just, you know what? It's just not a remodel. When you get divorced, it's not a remodel. It's a rebuild. Most times what you're trying to do is you're trying to fix the foundation. Right? If you feel like your marriage is wrong, a lot of times you feel like you built this castle on a bad foundation.
Right.
You got to knock it down, fix the foundation, start all over again.
That's a really good way to put it.
You're trying to patch up your life and patch up your life. It doesn't work. The walls keep cracking.
I got patches all over.
Right.
But sometimes you got to knock down the building, and we're starting with brick number 1 and rebuilding.
That is such
sure.
a good point that you're making, because I think that's where we get trapped, is that we're trying to patch things up without that person. It's like, no, this is done. Burn the house down, check the grounds, and rebuild on that.
Right.
Yeah,
the foundation
I love that you said that.
Needs to be fixed, and
absolutely,
the foundation is always you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
it's always you.
Yeah, that is so good.
So now I feel solid. Whatever I build, I know the foundation is not shifting.
And by the way, that's where you get your power back, and that is a huge stepping stone to your recovery, because then you make it about yourself. Again, like you said it so beautifully. It's like I could be in the story and the narrative and over, this happened to me, this happened to me, this. That's even why I wanted to throw the disclaimer out in the beginning about my ex. I'm not holding on to that. I had to let that go in order for my life to be where it's at today. I had to. And what you said last week, I recognize, and it was so profound. We were in our 20s. He's not the same person. I'm holding a 20-year-old version of somebody hostage. I can't do that. It's not serving me. But to be able to say the foundation was unstable because I am that foundation. This was the relationship I attracted at that time in my life. 18 years prior, you were a certain man. You're not that man. 18, same thing with Carmen. She was very young when she had her married her husband. When you grow and evolve, sometimes relationships don't grow and evolve together. You just grow apart and you become a different person. And not understanding that's who you are and building from that space is so fundamental to your growth. And that could be exciting and that could be freeing.
One thing for everyone to remember is, regardless of what you're going through in life, as messed up as you think your life is, you could get one phone call that would make all those things mean nothing. That somebody got sick, somebody's got some kind of disease that is going to take them out. I mean, suddenly all the things you were focused on mean nothing.
Right.
So it's really important to be in gratitude regardless of what you're going through.
Absolutely. All right, so going on to the next one, and this is definitely applicable to the two of you. It's learning to work together for the kids. If you're on the side of divorce where you are feeling as though this is not the space that I wanted to be in, they're breaking up our family, and as a result, it's affecting our children, and now you're not going to get to see your kids. You're never going to see them. You're destroying their lives, and now the kids have become a part of your tribe, and it becomes this tug of war with the kids and so on and so forth. And like you had said last week, sometimes the big family's over here and everybody's in that circle, and there's that lonely wolf on the side that says, they're building this belief system with my kids that are going to be against me, and it just becomes this back and forth. But it affects the children so much. So why is it important an important part of your recovery and getting your healing to just lay down your sword and say, you know what? We didn't get along. This relationship didn't work. But we can set all of that aside and let's figure out a way to work with our kids. Why is that so important for your own healing? Other than the obvious of it being very important for your children?
I think one thing we've done very well is be there for our kids. Probably to a fault for me, because I would never allow, like, he always was able to come to my house. He's always welcome. I've dated a lot. And when I say a fault to me, it was like I didn't have a boundary with my ex-husband.
Do you think it was because of the guilt?
The guilt, but more so for my kids.
Gotcha.
Because my kids were not going to suffer because I got divorced or we separated. That was not going to happen in my mind. They're not going to suffer, period. Now, whether they have or haven't, probably they've suffered, but in my mind, they're not going to suffer. So I'm never going to talk bad about their dad in our house. He's never going to talk bad about me. They're never going to be able to go to him because I said no. We were just always firm and clear on that. So I think for our children, I think we've done pretty good with our kids. They have issues, but they don't have like these crazy mommy, daddy issues that I'm aware of. So I think we've done good with that. But the boundary that I did not set with him has affected me more so in like trying to move forward dating.
Well, it's a beautiful thing because you still look at your ex as family.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's awesome. You know, I saw this article years ago. It was Vanessa Williams having Thanksgiving. And she had her 2 ex-husbands cooking together. They're in the kitchen cooking because she had kids by both people. And I go, how wonderful. She looks at them as family still.
That's so something I would do, but people,
They think it's
not.
weird, but no, it's really not because you are bonded to that person. You got lives that are on this planet.
It was like that, but it's not.
But I think what you have is very healthy.
Yeah.
Of course, you've got boundaries that you want to set for yourself, but the focus has always got to be the kids.
Yeah.
And I think when people think that they're getting over by using the kids as pawns or using the kids to get revenge on somebody or to be one up on somebody, that will flip one day. When the kids get older and they understand and they have their own family and their own kids, they will understand what you were doing.
Right.
And it may flip on you. So be careful of that because you're going to be with your kids or your kids are going to be in your life longer as adults than they are as children.
That's very true. Yep.
So when they figure out the manipulations that you were doing when they were kids, it may flip on you.
Yeah, it can
and
create
there's
a great deal of
nothing worse than being
resentment.
an old person with kids
That resent
that resent you.
Yeah.
You don't want to go there. So do what's right for the kids.
And I do want to, so go ahead.
A quick question. How do you guys feel about you and your wife had children together, correct? Okay, so I'm going to ask him.
Yeah, go for it.
My son asked me, I think he was about 17. He's 22 now. Why did we get a divorce? Because we were never fighting in front of them. It was kind of like it came out the blue, you know? And I could not answer that question to my son. And I wanted to answer it, but I didn't want him to look different at me or look different at his father. And to this day, I'm like, I should have just been honest with him in that moment, but I don't know how.
So what did you say? What was your answer?
I just said we just kind of grew apart. You know, there's nothing. I gave him a chicken shit answer. Yeah. You know what I mean?
But that's very raw and honest of you. And if I can just say something really quick to that, because it's kind of circling back. And then, of course, Rodney, you definitely can chime in here. First of all, I think when you say, I don't think I affected my kids, we have to be honest that no matter how well we do the co-parenting thing, divorce affects children. It just does. It does, period, point blank. And I think in order for us to recover and not to hold on to things, we just have to not be in denial about that, right? And then understanding the appropriateness of what can be communicated with the children and being able to have those conversations with your person. And also when we talk about embracing coping, it's like you embrace your coping, but if there's kids, you have to be able to embrace their coping as well, because there is a separation. And then as far as boundaries, when it's like, okay, we have a great co-parenting thing, but I haven't established good boundaries because dad can come and go as he pleases, that could potentially be detrimental for your children too, because it could give them a sense of false hope. Even though you're saying to them, no, daddy just can come and go as he pleases, there's a presence there that daddy's never fully left. And so sometimes that can leave your children with mixed signals too. So it's like if you're deciding to completely be done, there should be clear boundaries that daddy has his place, mama has his place. And, obviously there's other circumstances sometimes that can't be a thing. But otherwise, it could be you're teaching your kids bad boundaries as well. They're watching that. You were going to say, Rodney.
To answer your question, I don't think you gave a bad answer. Because really, you got divorced because you weren't in alignment with yourself. And that's what your child needs to understand. Now, that answer might not drop in to him till later, but that's the truth. The way you wanted to define yourself, the way you wanted to live, who you wanted to be was not going to be found in the context of that marriage. And I think you were looking for something really solid to give him, like, this is why we got divorced. But that's the truth.
Yeah.
Is that you felt out of alignment. So I think as kids get older, they understand those things more, because even with my kids when they were younger, they'd never understand that the person I am today could not exist in the context of that marriage. So sometimes just giving them an answer that will drop in later, that'll make sense later, is the best you can do.
I feel like I probably will revisit the conversation with my son as a grown man.
Right.
Because he asked me.
Yeah, and they need their
And
closure.
They need a
Right.
that was, I didn't even give him that much.
Okay.
You know, I cowered. I just
Yeah.
was like, I don't want
But
my
that's
son
so
to-
honest and that's so vulnerable to share that. And I think by you even saying that out loud, I think a lot of people will really be able to relate to that, because we all do it as parents, whether there's a divorce or not. We kind of overprotect our children sometimes by creating these facades. We talked about this the other day. Like I don't cry. I didn't cry in front of my son. I would never get emotional. And I thought that by me not breaking down and crying and being emotional in front of my son was protecting him. But what I taught him was that a woman is like hard and has like no emotion. I remember the first time he ever saw me break down, he didn't even know what to do with it. And so I realized emotions are real. Vulnerability is real. Sometimes I weep, and it's okay for him to see those emotions without me making it some form of burden for him. Because on the contrary, for me, the reason why I was so like stoic and not wanting him to see me break down and cry was because I had a mother, and this is no disrespect to my mother, she was very, very emotional, and it would make me uncomfortable because I always felt helpless around her. So I was projecting my experience on my son, thinking I was protecting. I was not protecting, I was projecting. And so there's a fine line and a balance with that because we worry about what our kids think about us. But at the end of the day, allow your kids to have an opinion about you that can be conversated through dialogue. Say, I'm getting ready to share this with you, but I feel a little vulnerable because I think you're going to judge me. And so if there is some judgment, can we at least talk about it? Will you give me that? And maybe that, especially for a 17-year-old, you can't have that conversation with a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old maybe. But you know what I'm saying?
I think it's also hard to express things that aren't real tangible. Like if there's abuse, if there's infidelity, that's real tangible. And when things are not as tangible, like in your experience, that's where the guilt also comes from. Because if you could put it on something tangible, then, I know why I'm leaving. Everybody can tell why I'm leaving. But when it's just like, I'm just not fulfilled, it's really hard to express that.
Explain that. Because they don't understand it.
And everybody around us was like so disappointed and hurt. It was like.
You look like you had the perfect marriage, right, to people?
And it wasn't a bad marriage. Right. There wasn't abuse. He put me on a pedestal. Right. It wasn't a bad marriage. It just, it wasn't in alignment with what I wanted to be, like you said.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it wasn't growing maybe. And I think sometimes we feel bad about being true to ourselves as it pertains to who we are in that moment, when things are kind of falling apart or people are going different way. Bad marriage doesn't equate always to abuse and toxicity and things like that. Sometimes the marriage is bad because it's withering, because it's dying and it's not growing.
Sometimes you just got married young. You're not the same person at 32, 33 years old
Often,
as you were
you see it all
21,
the time.
right? So it's not really that it was anything wrong with the people.
No.
It's just you would not have made that same choice at 32 that you made at 21.
Right. And I guess I wanted to clarify that because people are watching. Again, I'm realizing now there's so many triggers for people when they watch content. And for her to say, it was not a bad marriage, it's not a bad marriage, people are going to be attacking, like, well, why did you leave? Why did this and that? And it's like, to clarify, it was a bad marriage. That's why it ended. It wasn't bad if you're comparing it to abuse, but it was bad because for whatever reason, it ended. So it wasn't good. And we have to be very honest and transparent about those things because this is how we move forward.
I guess the better way to say is outwardly it didn't look bad, or my children didn't see. And like you said, there wasn't a tangible thing that was like, there was infidelity and
And you
abuse
saying, by the way, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you saying it's not a bad marriage is you still dealing with your guilt. It's like I don't want to say it was bad because it might hurt my ex-husband's feeling. And I'm not saying that is 100% what it is, but there's some subliminal messaging there when you're still kind of getting over the guilt thing because you don't want to act like you're shredding it apart and make it a bad thing. But it was bad. That's why it ended.
Here's the definition.
And I could be wrong.
You can have a decent relationship and a bad marriage. See, she never had a bad relationship with her husband, but the marriage wasn't working. The contract of a marriage wasn't working. That person could still be her best friend.
Right.
He is.
Right.
So
He is.
It's
Our
the-
But the
relationship-
dynamic, that's beautifully said,
People,
100%.
people think relationship and marriage is the same thing. It's not.
That
Correct.
is-
That is
You
well
can
put.
have a very good relationship and a marriage that's not working because
That
you,
is
you
so-
want to go in a
That's-
different direction.
That's such a liberating thing,
Mhm.
especially for people who know the marriage is over and they feel, because like she said, I have a great relationship with this man, but I don't want to be here anymore. And that, and being confused about that, right? Because everybody on the outside is going to be like, why can't you make that work?
Totally.
And they're different. And so what
Yeah,
you
we
said
still
was
get
so
that.
eloquently put. So I want to, we're limited. We've only got a few, and I got a couple different ones. I definitely want to get through these. The next one is beware of stumbling blocks. And I literally just totally drew a blank on this, but the stumbling blocks would be like what you had said earlier, getting caught up in the story and the narrative and letting that be your mantra, and then how that attracted certain things. You know, I'm a divorcee. I'm divorced. I failed. This should have worked out. Especially if you have people and family and people around you that don't agree with the decisions, or if there's a religious aspect to it where the belief system says you should not be a divorced person, and you can have these stumbling blocks and find yourself falling into these mental traps and making yourself feel awful, like a failure. And then, like you said, Rodney, then you start attracting certain things into your life because what you believe in your mind, your life has to fit that narrative. So does anyone want to kind of like expound upon that?
Stumbling blocks. I've had a few. Maybe more than most.
No, we've all had them, that's for sure.
For me, I know the voids I was trying to fill in my life, thinking the idea that I wanted with relationship and what I was attracting was like the little that I wanted my husband to be was the one thing that I would accept or attract in men, and it was like, I thought a man that was strong, it just had to be real assertive and toxic. I was like craving these toxic things about relationships and thinking I can control everything. So I think my stumbling blocks were my own voids I was trying to fill.
That's
and
powerful.
even still, they're getting smaller, but I think it's just always a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure.
Stumbling blocks for me had more to do with holding on to things of the past. I got very good at letting things go. Sometimes you have to let people go, relationships go. You can't care what people think that were part of your former life.
Right.
You're going to be the devil to some people for whatever reason.
Right.
So
I'm the devil for people watching sometimes.
You just have to learn to let go. I mean, that's a real skill in life, is to know when something has had an expiration date that is past. So let go, not in anger, just because my life is moving forward.
Right.
And things that are keeping you stuck in the past, you've got to just learn to let go in love.
Absolutely. That's so key what you said there, because that was a big stumbling block for me, is wanting everybody to hear the correct story. Like, no, that's not what you, and again, just me posting last week and getting all this rebuttal and negative comments, particularly from men. I mean, it was all men who had something negative to say. And inside of me, even though that relationship is such a part of my past, and by the way, it's a beautiful part of my past because it really, truly taught me a lot about myself. And it's really been an intricate part of my growth. But me having this feeling of wanting to break the whole story down. But I had to catch myself and saying, okay, let's just have fun with them and let's just say little things. These are people that are projecting their own feelings on me. But I don't need to explain to strangers what has happened or how it happened or how it went down, because they're still going to perceive it however they want based on their own life's experience. And that was a stumbling block for me when I was in the recovery parts of my divorce, because I wanted to over-explain everything to everybody who I thought had an opinion about it. So I'm going to go on real quick to avoid hanging on to desperation. So we've got 2 more after this, and hopefully we can get through them. So avoid hanging on to desperation. And I did this 100%. Again, although I was the person that said, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger here and get the divorce, I held on to that decision for so long because I was still hoping and praying and whatever that this person, he and I would figure things out and work things out, because I really didn't want to be divorced. I loved this person. I was in love with this person at that time. Even after I got a divorce, I didn't completely cut him off. So what happened is months later, he's, I want to come home. I miss you, the whole story and everything like that. And I told him, come home. We're completely divorced. And he came home because I was hanging on to desperation. But what that did to me was it held me back tremendously, because now I got this hope and all this stuff starts coming. We're going to get back together. And this divorce may have been the best thing that's ever happened to us. And for some people that's true. Some people get divorced and years later and they're great. It was complete opposite for me, and for us, I should say. And it really set me back emotionally. And so I think part of the recovery thing is to let go so you can fully accept that it's over. I think people hold on when they feel like there's even a percentage. If there's 1% of something salvaging out of this, especially when they're on the side that doesn't want it, it could really slow down your recovery.
Well, part of that is not having a vision for where you want to go. So you have no North Star. All you know is relationships. So it's just nothing here. It's just the void.
Right.
So when there's nothing ahead of you, it's like you jump off the Titanic and you don't know where land is. You're just in the dark ocean bobbing. You want to go back to the ship.
Right.
That you know is going to crash. Right.
Right.
So,
that you know is sinking 100%.
Right, that you know is sinking. But, you got to have a vision for yourself. You've got to have something to focus on. And there's a reason why. You have to have a why for your decisions in life. You have no why. It feels random. When it feels random, you welcome it back because it's familiar.
I love that. That was so well put. That is it. When you're coming out of a thing, it's so easy to focus on that thing. And like you said, it's like, okay, how can I see my life moving forward? What is that like? And having that vision, that's powerful. I think that's powerful. All right. The next one, and did you want to kind of add to that? Don't rush into new relationships. Here's what I did. Okay. I told myself, number one, I'm never gonna get married again. I got a ring on my finger, so that was a lie. And I said that I'm gonna take this time. I'm gonna give myself time and space. Initially, I said that, and then there was these voids and this emptiness and this like knowing he's doing his thing and blah blah blah. And I was like, I need to find somebody quickly, but I hadn't dealt with my shit. Right, I was still in it emotionally, and so I thought, I'm just going to do me. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to have fun. I'm just going to go out there. And it was a complete disaster, and it was such a lie. I was not emotionally available. I could tell myself I was, because I was trying to fill up an empty cup, but I was not emotionally available. So one or two things would happen. Either I would find the next unemotionally available person, and we'd be unemotionally available to each other, and then we would beat each other up in emotional games, or I'd get into manipulating relationships, or people were breaking me down because I already felt like I wasn't enough, so they would just validate that for me in some form that didn't look like the other thing. I would rationalize relationships that were no good for me because at least he's not like this, and I started comparing relationships, and it was just a big cluster bad word, because I don't want to say the word, but y'all know, fill in the blanks. But it was just a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had to take a pause and have a real humble pie breakfast, lunch, and dinner with self and say, Lorraine, this relationship happened. These are the things that you think he did and you feel he did to you. But be honest, you're betraying yourself and you've been lying to yourself, and you need to take a freaking break and sit in your stuff and feel it. And it was the only reason why I was able to really. And I still struggle. There's still some residual there, but I had to take that pause. You were going to say, Carmen?
No, I totally was so afraid to like be alone. I felt like I was so ready though. Like I was excited to start dating and, you know, be like have new experiences. I couldn't wait, you know. But probably not the best thing to do. I didn't feel like I needed a bunch of time to recover from my marriage. I don't know why, I just didn't feel like that. But now looking residually and just what's happened over the course of from my divorce to now, like I really was just trying to fill voids in myself and finding things that and I literally would be like, I'm afraid to be by myself. Like I don't know how I would be without having a mate. Like I literally was like, all I know how to do is be a wife. And then I jump in these relationships like expecting a husband and say it's my boyfriend, but you know, because I don't know how to date.
Right.
So I did a lot of that. Yeah. A lot of that.
I dated a lot of broken people because I was broken.
Yeah.
Right? You can only attract what you are.
And there were so many of them.
Yeah. What happened?
There's a whole there's a whole world of this.
What was the wake up call for me?
It's like the easiest fishing you'll ever do.
They're fighting everywhere.
This was the wake up call for me. I was out one night and I met this incredible woman. I mean, just every box she would check. I mean, she was smart, looked great. Their philosophies on life, everything. I was like, wow, I was so impressed. Then I said to myself, bro, you don't qualify for her. Because I was a mess. You know, mentally a mess, financially a mess. I could talk the talk. I could talk exactly like I talk now. So I could sound impressive. But if I were to get with her within a month, she would figure out this dude's a mess. And I realized I didn't qualify for what I really wanted.
Wow.
So I took myself out of the game for a long time because for me, that was a kind of a wake-up call to say, work on you till you qualify for that because right now you don't.
Wow, that's powerful.
Right? So anything you qualify for ain't that. Now, why do I want something lesser than what I know exists?
It's so true. You get what you tolerate, right? And what you believe about yourself.
Right.
And it shows up differently than who you are. So it doesn't really always make sense. There are brokenness, like abandonment issues, let's say for me, and now meet another abandoned person. Maybe my abandonment behaves this way, right? But their abandonment behaves this way. And so now two abandoned people are coming together and it becomes toxic. And yet I'm pointing my finger at them and they're pointing their finger at me because we don't know the root is abandonment because that person, let's say, for example, I'm the needy one. I need you. And why are they pushing me away? I'm just trying to love them. I'm trying to show them all my love and affection and attention. And they're like, oh my God, I can't let a person get too close to me. Why are they smothering me? And they start being mean and shutting down. Why are they smothering? Because they don't want to be abandoned, so they don't let people get close. I don't want to be abandoned, so I can't get close enough. And so this is exactly your point. It's like a sea of broken people and we're all going fishing.
Well, and for people who have worked on themselves, like this person that I was so impressed with, obviously she worked on herself to become that.
Right.
So why would she volunteer for somebody who's a mess?
Right.
So as I've worked to find myself, my standards have also changed because I've worked hard to be here. So why am I going to sign up for
some BS?
Right, what somebody else is going through. Not to judge, but I
with
just
no judgment.
worked my way past that. I get it. But why am I going to invite that in my life when I work myself past that? So what happens is when you do spend some time alone, you can find yourself and you'll find that your standards also change.
Right.
So when I look back at who I may have dated 7 or 8 years ago, it's kind of funny to me now. Like it would never happen today. I would never make that same choice. I'm not signing up for that.
Right. And that's a good point you made because it's like the lone thing. Because I think a lot of people who've been in long relationships are comfortable and they get used to having their person, whether it's going good or bad. We talked about this last week. You could be in a relationship and even the dysfunction of the relationship is just a very familiar thing for you. And it's just the comfort of having that. And so like you said, when you can be comfortable, and like you said, that was your struggle with being alone, when you can get comfortable with self, right? When you can be in the room with 3 people, you, yourself, and I, whatever, then it's like, I'm good. I'm okay to be alone. I'm not going to make that a safety mechanism, and I'm not going to wallow in loneliness to protect me, but I'm actually really good being alone. Then you become a lot more selective on who you're going to allow be in occupancy of your space.
It's real comfortable alone.
If life was a report card, if life was a report card, I'm a solid B every day of the week by myself. I might not be an A. You need somebody to be an A, but I'm a solid B and I can count on it. I'm not an A one day, F one day, C one day, A, F, all over the place. I can get up and I'm on the honor roll every single day.
I love that.
By myself.
Yeah.
And when you're that's when you're best qualified to be in a relationship, because you're really not looking for someone to fix you.
Right.
It's just enhancing you.
Right.
Right. So your grade goes up just a little bit. Now you're an A. You're pretty consistent A. Now, if I'm not going to have a consistent A, we're not doing it.
Yeah. That happened to me even in my relationship now, because we've had a lot of makeup breakup, and a lot of that makeup breakup happened in the beginning because I was still healing and going through stuff. And so we had a big breakup, but in that time frame, I really had to do a lot of personal work. And it wasn't until I got more comfortable with myself that I was able to be more comfortable in that relationship and not be desperate in that relationship, because I think when you're comfortable with self and you get to that point, and I'm going to circle back to what you said about, okay, I'm divorced or whatever, but I have a vision for my life. And that vision is for me to be that honor roll student for self, right? And because I am and want and desire a really meaningful relationship, which means I don't want to be with a broken person. I want to be with a person who's healed like myself, but I got to get there first because I can't require something of someone that I am not. And so I just feel like even for myself, it's liberating because then you don't act desperately in your relationship. It's just like, I know what I bring here and I know who I am and I know who you are. And it just can be, and I don't have to tolerate or put up with things that I don't want to because I'm not afraid of being by myself. Okay, so the last point, and Carmen, were you going to say something on that?
That's real.
And the very last one, is self-help and other resources. And we're talking. This is a platform and things like that. But at the end of the day, and it kind of circles back to talking it out. Going through a divorce or leaving a long-term relationship is a loss. And there is a great deal of mourning that comes with that. Whether you're the one that pulled the trigger, there is an adjustment to it, right? Or you're the person who didn't want it. And you only have so many tools in your toolbox. And I say this all the time. To go and get an expert or somebody who can help you with the next phase of your life, because if all your life has been this thing, sometimes it's hard to get that vision. Sometimes it's hard to see what's next because you're still in the mix of it. What do you all want to say with that without me rambling?
I think I definitely had a good support system of friends and like spiritual counselors.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not huge on therapy. I believe in it, but I believe sometimes just having people you trust that you can talk to is how I cope with a lot of things.
I think personal development is huge because when you're by yourself, that's the best time to work on yourself because a relationship is its own entity that takes time and attention. But when it's just you, when you can find what's my stuff, what's the stuff I've been dragging with me from childhood? Why do I do what I do? You will take a different version of you into the next relationship. So it's really important to learn about yourself and to have outside input because you can't figure stuff out through the same lenses you were looking through in the first place, right? There's something that causes you to be blind to what you need to see.
Right.
So yeah, you need some outside help to be able to see what you can't see. And it's a good time when you are by yourself. It's a good time to get those insights, to be able to look within self and to heal those things. Right. So you don't take that into your next relationship.
And exactly what you said. And I see people do this. I did it. I see people do it. I've done it myself. The self-help thing. I'm going to help myself. I'm going to be accountable to self and I'm going to talk about all the things and I'm going to sit in that stuff. But again, I took the course a long time ago. I always talk about this. So I don't want to think I'm plagiarizing, but you know what you know. You know what you don't know, but you don't know what you don't know. And you can sit with self all by yourself for as long as you want, trying to figure things out. but you only have the tools that you have. And you will need other people, friends, of course, family, but then sometimes you have to go outside of that because they're in your circle and been with you the whole time too. And sometimes they don't have the capacity or they don't have the tools. They just can tell you what they've experienced. But if everybody that you're seeking counsel from has the same outcome as you do, they might be, they're well-intended, their hearts are, they're there to be there for you, but they might be limited in their resources to actually provide you some growth. And sometimes we just have to seek things outside of our comfort zone and say, I need the help, and because I want this to move a little bit faster.
Well, you have a story about yourself, and then your friends also have a story about you.
Right.
So finding someone who has no story, who can just...
That's a great way to put it.
See it as it is, helps. Because there's nothing that they're attaching that to.
It's interesting because I've been coaching a lot of people lately, and that is kind of a common thread with people that I'm coaching. I kind of let them dump and they share and things like that. And I kind of look for some patterns and some cue words and trigger words and et cetera. And one of the things that I notice is that sometimes there'll be patterns and wait. And then I pick up something and they're like, wait, no one's ever said that before me. I never thought about that or whatever. So again, to your point, I'm not emotionally involved. I haven't been in the stories with them and all of that stuff. So me being on the outside with no bias can really give them some tools to say, maybe you didn't see it here, you need to see it this way. And for me personally, I did a lot of self-help work and I hit a stumbling block because I wasn't going anywhere. It was like, okay, I've done all this work. Why isn't it? Because I didn't understand my mantra and my language. It wasn't until I got outside help to say, well, you're telling yourself you're a broken person and you're reading and getting self-help and you're doing all these books on brokenness. So I kept confirming, even though I thought I was doing it through the right pathway. And it took that little tool to say, here's a new word for you. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. There was a lot to cover. I hope you guys appreciate the transparency and the honesty with this. And I hope that for those that are listening that are going through recovery of losing a long-term relationship or relationship, that this was helpful to you. Again, thank you for watching. Do not forget to hit the subscription button. And until next time, ciao.